My wife's family used to treat me like I didn't jake her, like I barely existed, until I made some serious money. Then they tried to get rid of the prenup. But I made one move that shut them down completely. I met Emily when I was 24. I had just finished college and landed my first job at an IT firm in Denver. She was wrapping up her teaching degree back then. We met at a barbecue a mutual friend threw. There was something about her. She could light up a room, get everyone laughing, make you feel like you belonged. I was drawn to her from the start. No denying it, I was hooked. Emily came from a well-off family. Her dad owned a few car dealerships, and her mom ran a boutique over in Boulder. They weren't crazy rich, but they had that comfortable kind of money that makes life smoother. My background was different. We were your classic middle-class family. My dad worked as an electrician. My mom was a nurse. They raised me and my two brothers in a modest house that always felt like home. We had what we needed, but there weren't a lot of extras. New clothes and vacations? Those were rare. Emily and I clicked fast. We started dating, and within a year, I was sure she was the one. I proposed to her at this quiet park we used to hang out at on lazy Sundays. She said yes. It felt like everything was falling into place. Well, almost everything. Her parents, especially her dad, weren't exactly thrilled about me. From the start, they made it pretty clear they didn't think I was right for Emily. It wasn't in-your-face disrespect. It was more like these little jabs, subtle comments that reminded me I wasn't one of them. Stuff like, "So, Jake, what's your 5-year plan?" Or, Emily's used to a certain lifestyle." I tried to brush it off. I loved Emily, and she was always in my corner. But then, while we were planning the wedding, her parents dropped a bombshell. They brought up a prenup. I remember her dad calling me into his office one night after dinner. He had this serious expression, like he was about to give me some kind of wise, fatherly advice. Instead, he handed me a fat stack of papers and said, "This is just a formality, Jake. It's to protect Emily's future. I'm sure you understand." I didn't. And honestly, I didn't like it one bit. It felt like they saw me as some gold digger. I wasn't making much, maybe $55,000 a year, but I had big goals. I wanted to prove myself. Not just to them, but to Emily and to me. Still, I didn't want to cause trouble. So I took the documents home and went through them. I was angry, confused. The prenup basically said that if we ever split up, I'd walk away with only what I had earned myself. Nothing from her family. Nothing she inherited. Nothing we might build together. It was all about protecting her, not us. I hated every word of it. I talked to Emily about it, hoping she'd take my side. But she just said, "Jake, it's not a big deal. It's just paperwork. It doesn't change how I feel about you." She was calm, but I could tell she felt torn, stuck between me and her family. I didn't want to make her choose, so I swallowed my pride and signed it. Told myself it didn't jake her. I wasn't marrying her for her family's money anyway. Looking back now, that might have been my first mistake, letting her parents set the tone for how our marriage would work. At the time, I thought I was doing the mature thing. I figured they'd come around eventually, and the prenup would just collect dust. The wedding was beautiful, but man, it was awkward. Our families didn't really mix. My brothers and cousins showed up in clearance rack suits or whatever they could borrow. Her side looked like they just stepped out of a country club ad. No one made a scene, but the difference was obvious. After the wedding, we moved into a small apartment in Denver. Emily started teaching at a local elementary school, and I kept pushing through my IT job. Those first few years weren't easy, but they were honest. We budgeted hard, cooked almost every meal at home, saved everything we could. Her parents would sometimes drop snide comments about our money situation, but we didn't care. We were happy. Still, that prenup never left the back of my mind. Not because I thought we'd ever use it, but because it meant something deeper. It reminded me that her family didn't really trust me. Even after we were married, after we built a home together, her dad would still throw little digs about my job or our bank account. It stung. So I worked even harder. I wanted to prove them wrong. But the prenup? It never really went away. Sometimes it would come up out of nowhere. Emily's mom might make a joke about how smart they were to have me sign it. Her dad would drop it into conversations about protecting assets. They always said it with a smile, but it hit like a slap every time. I never said anything. Just kept my head down and focused on my work. I loved Emily. I wasn't going to let her parents ruin that. Back then, I told myself if we were happy, that was all that jakered. But now, years later, I see the truth. That prenup wasn't just a document, it was a symbol. It told me her family didn't think I was enough. And as life started changing, that little piece of paper would become the spark that lit a fire I never saw coming. After years of grinding in that IT job, things finally started shifting. Not all at once. It wasn't some magical overnight success. It happened in pieces. Small wins that slowly added up. I was 28 when I got my first real break. But getting there wasn't exactly smooth. I was still at the same IT firm in Denver. The pay was okay, not great. I'd been there 4 years and was stuck in the same spot. The job was stable, but it didn't challenge me. And there was no real room to grow. I knew I had to take a leap. A buddy at work, Derek, started telling me about this side hustle he was doing, freelance coding for startups. At first, I thought he was nuts. I figured he'd burn out fast, trying to juggle 2 jobs. But then he showed me a single month's paycheck from one of those gigs, and my jaw hit the floor. He was pulling in double what we made in a full-time month. That lit a fire under me. I'd always been good at web development, problem solving, that kind of thing. So I started spending my weekends brushing up on coding languages, learning frameworks, messing with side projects. Emily thought I was pushing myself too hard. "You already work full-time," she'd say. "Why are you adding more on top of that?" But I couldn't let it go. I had a feeling there was something real here. After about 7 months of side hustling, I landed a client that changed everything. It was a small tech startup that needed someone to build out their entire backend system. The pay? More than I'd ever seen for a single job. And they offered stock options on top of it. At first, I didn't know if those stock options were worth anything, but something about the company just clicked with me. So, I took a leap. For the next year, I went all in. I was still clocking 45 hours a week at my day job, but every spare second outside of that, I was glued to the startup work. Weekends, late nights, holidays, you name it, I was working. Emily supported me, but I could tell it was wearing on her. She was getting tired of me always being half there. We'd argue, nothing huge, but little things. Like me missing dinner again or being buried in code during what was supposed to be movie night. I'd always say, "Just a little longer, I swear." But honestly, I don't think either of us really believed that. And then, it happened. The startup got bought out by a bigger company, and suddenly, those stock options? They were worth a fortune. One day, I was juggling bills and barely scraping by. The next, I could pay off our mortgage, clear the car loan, and still have a solid cushion in the bank. I'll never forget the look on Emily's face when I told her. Total disbelief, but in a good way. Like she couldn't wrap her head around it, but was proud. That moment changed everything. I quit my IT job the next week. It was something I'd dreamed of doing for years. My boss didn't take it well. He tried to play the guilt card. "You're one of our best guys, Jake. You sure you want to walk away from this?" But I was done. I had bigger things in mind now. First thing I did? I surprised Emily with a trip to Hawaii. We talked about going for years, but it had always been out of reach. This was my way of saying, "Hey, I haven't forgotten about us." All that sacrifice was for something. It was paradise. Long beaches, perfect sunsets, amazing food. But even there, I couldn't stop thinking, what's next? I realized I loved working for myself. The independence, the control, the challenge. It lit something in me. That's when I decided to start my own business. With the money from the startup, I launched a property management company. Real estate had always interested me, and I saw it as a steady way to grow wealth without being chained to a desk. It wasn't easy. I had no background in running a company. Everything from legal forms to hiring people was brand new territory. But I threw myself into it the same way I had with freelancing. I read books, went to workshops, leaned on a mentor I'd met during my side hustle days. And little by little, it started to come together. By the time I hit 32, things were finally falling into place. The business was doing well, way better than I'd expected. We were building a solid client base, and I had a team I trusted to handle the day-to-day grind. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I was comfortable and proud. I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd finally earned a little respect from Emily's family. But respect wasn't what came next. It started small. Her dad, Frank, would call me now and then, asking about investments. "Hey Jake," he'd say, "I've been looking into a property downtown. What's your take on it?" At first, I was happy to offer advice. I figured, hey, he sees I've made something of myself. But then his questions got a little more involved. "Do you think you'd want to invest with me?" he asked one day, just to help get the ball rolling. I paused. On one hand, he was family, and part of me wanted to help. On the other hand, The deal he described didn't sound solid. So I told him, as politely as I could, that I wasn't in a position to invest right then. And just like that, his tone toward me changed. He didn't say anything outright, but the next time we saw him, there was a coldness in the air. Emily noticed too. She asked if something had happened, and I shrugged it off. Probably just business stress, I said. But deep down, I knew. He wasn't happy I'd said no. Her mom, Carol, had her own subtle way of making things uncomfortable. She'd drop little comments about how expensive life was now, how hard it was keeping up their lifestyle with Frank semi-retired. "We're not getting any younger, Jake," she'd say with that sweet smile. "Sometimes I think about how lucky you and Emily are to have such a strong financial foundation." Lucky. That word hit a nerve. It wasn't luck that got us here. It was countless late nights and missing dinners and sacrificing time together. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to stir the pot. Then came the night it all shifted. Emily and I went over to her parents' place for dinner one weekend. Everything started out fine. We had steak, the usual chit-chat. But partway through the meal, Frank brought up the prenup. "You know, Jake," he said, cutting into his steak, "I've been thinking about that agreement we had you sign when you married Emily." I froze. I hadn't thought about that document in years. To me, it was ancient history, something we did to keep the peace. "What about it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well," he said, "don't you think it's kind of outdated now? I mean, look how successful you've become. You've built a great life for my daughter. I respect that, but maybe it's time to get rid of that old agreement." I looked over at Emily. She was suddenly very focused on her mashed potatoes. It was obvious she'd seen this coming. "I don't know, Frank," I said carefully. "It's never been a problem for us. Why mess with what's working?" Carol jumped in. "It's just that things are different now, Jake. Back then, we were trying to protect Emily's future. But now, you're part of the family." Family. That word again. It was their way of saying, if you don't agree with us, you're the outsider. I looked at Emily again, hoping she'd speak up, but she stayed quiet. That silence, that stung more than anything. "Honestly," I said after a pause, "I don't see a reason to change it. It's just a document sitting in a drawer somewhere. Doesn't affect our lives." Frank's smile got tight. Carol gave Emily a little look. Like, "Can you talk some sense into him?" But no one pushed it further that night. On the drive home, I brought it up. "Why didn't you say anything back there?" I asked. She let out a sigh, staring out the window. "Because I don't want to be caught in the middle, Jake. You know how my parents are. They're just trying to do what they think is best for me. And what about what's best for us?" I asked her. "This is our marriage, not theirs. The prenup's never been an issue for us, so why are they so obsessed with it now?" She didn't have much of a response. Instead, she just said, "Can you please talk to them? Don't stress about it." But I did stress. A lot. Over the next few weeks, the pressure kept building. Frank and Carol wouldn't drop it. They kept bringing up the prenup like it was just casual conversation. Emily started to sound different too. She'd say things like, "What do you have to lose by getting rid of it?" That's when I felt like I was getting it from both sides, battling her parents and Emily. I loved her, no question, but it was getting harder to feel like she still had my back. Then came the tipping point. Carol called me one afternoon while I was at the office. At first, it was the usual small talk. But before long, she circled back to the prenup. "Jake, I really think you should consider how this looks," she said. "Keeping that document in place makes it seem like you don't trust Emily. And that's not fair to her." That was it for me. "With all due respect, Carol," I said, keeping my voice even, "this isn't your decision to make. Emily and I are fine with how things are." She paused for a second. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Well, if you're that determined to keep it, I guess we'll just have to see how Emily feels about that in the long run." It wasn't a direct threat, but it sure felt like one. I hung up, furious. That night, I told Emily what her mom had said. She didn't look surprised. Instead, she just said, "They're just looking out for me, Jake. They don't mean any harm." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about the prenup. It was about control. Her parents had always been in charge of her life. Now, they were trying to extend that control to me. Hey, it's Jake again. First off, thanks to everyone who's offered advice or support so far. It's honestly been eye-opening. Writing all this down has helped me see things more clearly. And hearing from folks who've dealt with similar stuff, it makes a difference. Anyway, here's where things stand. It hasn't gotten better. If anything, it's worse. Emily's been bringing up the prenup more often, And the way she talks about it is different now. It used to be, maybe we should talk about this. Now it's more like, if you trust me, you'll tear it up. We've had some serious arguments lately. The last one got heated when I said flat out, "This isn't about trust, Emily. This is about your parents trying to control our marriage." She didn't like that. She snapped back. "Or maybe it's about you not trusting me. What kind of husband keeps something like this in place after all these years?" That one hit me. I said, "The prenup hasn't jakered for years. So why now? What's really changed? The only difference is that your parents suddenly see dollar signs." She called me paranoid. That's her favorite line lately. At that point, I knew we needed space, somewhere quiet to talk, just the two of us. So I suggested we head to the cabin we used to love. It's a little spot by the river, peaceful and far from everything. I figured maybe we could reset, talk like we used to, without her parents hovering. Emily agreed, though her mood made it pretty clear she wasn't excited about it. When we got there, it felt familiar in the best way. Quiet, secluded, like we were in our own world again. That first evening, we made dinner together. For a few moments, it felt almost normal, but there was still this quiet tension between us. The next morning, I decided to just rip the Band-Aid off. We were sitting on the dock, watching the river drift by. I turned to her and said, "Emily, I need to know what this is really about. Is this our issue, or is it your parents talking through you?" She sighed, clearly annoyed. "Jake, this is about us. My parents don't control how I think. I'm the one who believes the prenup doesn't make sense anymore. I wasn't buying it. Come on, Emily. Let's not pretend. Your parents made me sign it, and now they're the ones trying to make me get rid of it. You think that's just a coincidence?" She turned to me, eyes sharp. "Do you even hear yourself? You're acting like my parents are some kind of villains. They just want what's best for me. What's best for you? What about what's best for us? This isn't their marriage, Emily. It's ours, and I'm not going to let them dictate how we run it." That's when she said something that made my blood boil. "Maybe the issue isn't them, Jake. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're so wrapped up in your own insecurities, you don't see how unfair this is to me." Insecure. I shot back. "You think I'm insecure because I won't tear up a contract your parents forced on me? One they only wanted because they didn't trust me in the first place?" She shrugged. "Well, if you still don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't even be talking about a future together." That one hit like a punch to the gut, but I refused to let it show. "Wow," I said. "So now it's a threat? You're going to walk away if I don't cave to your parents?" "It's not a threat," she said flatly. "It's just the truth. If you're so obsessed with the prenup, maybe you don't even see me as your partner anymore. Maybe you think I'm just waiting for you to mess up so I can take everything." That was it. I stood up, stared her dead in the eye, and said, "Don't flip this on me like I'm the problem here. I've busted my ass for everything we've built, without a dime from your parents. If anyone should be questioning loyalty, it's me." She didn't say a word, just looked at me. I turned and walked back to the cabin to cool off. The rest of that trip? A complete disaster. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was short, tense, and cold. By the time we packed up and drove home, it was painfully clear we weren't on the same page anymore. I've got my first therapy session this week. I'm hoping it helps me figure out what the hell to do next. Right now, I feel like I'm walking through a minefield. One wrong move, and it all blows up. I still love Emily, but this whole thing is making me question a lot. If anyone out there's been through something similar, I'd really appreciate hearing how you handled it. Thanks for reading, and thanks for having my back. Day 2. Hey folks, I wish I had better news. Really I do, but things have only gotten worse. I'm at the point where I don't even know if my marriage can survive this. Everything boiled over last Wednesday. I walked into the house after work and found Emily's entire family sitting in our living room. Her parents, her sister, Lindsay, and Emily herself. All of them, just waiting for me, like it was some kind of intervention. The second I walked through the door, Frank didn't waste any time. "Jake," he said, "we've been talking, and it's time to put this prenup thing to bed. It's tearing the family apart. We can't go on like this." "We?" I thought. Since when did this become a group project? This was my marriage, not a family committee. I looked over at Emily, hoping she'd speak up, maybe defuse the situation. But she just stared at the floor, silent. "Look," I said, trying to stay calm. "I've already made myself clear. The prenup stays. This isn't up for debate anymore." That's when Carol jumped in. "Jake, you're being unreasonable. Emily has given everything to this marriage, and all you're doing is treating her like she's disposable. Disposable? I repeated, stunned. I've spent years building a life with her, while dealing with you two constantly in our business. With all due respect, Carol, this isn't your decision. Emily and I need to figure this out ourselves. But she wasn't backing off. It is our business when it affects the family. If you really cared about Emily, you'd see how much keeping that prenup is hurting her. And before I could get a word in, Frank dropped something that chilled me. You're not the only one with options here, Jake, he said coldly. Emily deserves to be protected. And if you can't see that, maybe your marriage isn't as strong as you think. It sounded like a threat, and I wasn't having it. Are you seriously implying that my marriage depends on me tearing up the document you insisted I sign? That's rich, Frank. Real rich. The room went dead silent. I noticed Lindsay, Emily's younger sister, fidgeting in her seat. She always seemed kind of out of place in their family, quiet, not really into the drama. I didn't think much of it at the time, but maybe I should have. Eventually, I told them all to leave. I wasn't going to be ambushed like that in my own home. Emily stayed behind. And that night, we had one of the worst arguments we've ever had. She accused me of being selfish. I told her I was tired of being treated like a walking ATM by her and her parents. It got ugly. She stormed out, said she was going to stay with her folks for a few days. I didn't stop her. The next day, I got a call from Lindsay. That surprised me. We barely talked outside of family events. She sounded nervous and asked if we could meet up in person. I figured maybe she wanted to apologize or explain what the hell had happened at the house. We met at a little coffee shop. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept, kept glancing over her shoulder, like she was scared someone might see her. Finally, she leaned in and said, Jake, I overheard something the other night. I think you need to know about it. What she told me made my head spin. Apparently, Emily and her parents had been scheming for months. Lindsay had overheard them talking during dinner, not realizing she was in the next room. They said the prenup has to go before Emily can leave you, she told me, her voice shaking. They were saying it's the only way she'll get what she deserves. Leave me? That hit like a truck. I asked, why would she want to leave? Lindsay hesitated, then dropped the real bombshell. Because she's been seeing someone else. I stared at her, speechless. And her parents know, she added. That's why they're pushing so hard to get rid of the prenup. If she divorces you with it still in place, she walks away with nothing. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I asked Lindsay if she was sure. She nodded. I didn't want to believe it either, but I heard everything. They even talked about how to make you look like the bad guy. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process it all. Lindsay looked genuinely upset. She wasn't lying. I could see it. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. She sighed. Because it's not right. You don't deserve this. I've always thought you were a good guy, and I hate how my family's treating you. I don't want to be part of it. I thanked her and promised I'd keep her name out of it. After she left, I sat there for what felt like hours, thinking about everything. All those late nights working. Every argument about the prenup. Emily's sudden shift in attitude. It all made sense now. When I got home, I started digging through our finances. Sure enough, there were charges I didn't recognize. Restaurants, hotels, even a couple of jewelry stores. I haven't confronted Emily yet, but I've started gathering everything I can. I called my lawyer and laid it all out. They told me to stay calm, not to act on emotion. But man, that's easier said than done. Right now, I'm trying to figure out my next move. This betrayal, it cuts deep. I never thought I'd be in this kind of situation. But one thing's for sure, the prenup is staying right where it is. And so is my self-respect. If anyone's been through anything even close to this, I'd appreciate any advice you've got. Seriously. Thanks for sticking with me. Final update. Hey everyone. Jake here for what I hope is the last time. This whole nightmare has been wild, but I've finally made it through. And let me tell you, it feels damn good to have my life back. After Lindsay told me everything, and yeah, she's the real MVP in all of this, I got my act together fast. My lawyer and I went to work like a machine. Between the proof of Emily's cheating, the shady spending, and her parents' involvement, the divorce was almost too easy. When I finally confronted Emily, she didn't even try to deny it. She just broke down crying, playing the victim, throwing out excuses left and right. I felt so alone while you were always working, she sobbed. You cared more about your job than me. I wasn't buying it. I looked her right in the eye and said, you don't get to blame me for your choices. I was busting my ass to build a life most people only dream about, and you threw it away. She tried one more time, said, well, maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed someone else. That one hurt, but I didn't let it show. I just said, you didn't need to do anything. You chose to. And now you get to live with those choices. And then I dropped the hammer. I've already filed for divorce. The look on her face? Priceless. Like she couldn't believe I actually meant it. Then she switched gears. Started begging. We can fix this, Jake. Counseling, a fresh start, whatever it takes. But there was nothing left to fix. The trust was gone. Her choices had spoken louder than any apology ever could. Now, about that prenup. Oh, that beautiful, ironclad, life-saving document, courtesy of her own family. Back when we got married, they insisted on it. And in the end, it's what saved me. Emily walked away with nothing, not a single penny of the money I worked my tail off to earn. No spousal support, no slice of the assets, not a dime. And with the cheating on record, she didn't even have a legal leg to stand on. Her parents, of course, were furious. Carol left me voicemail after voicemail, long, dramatic rants about how I was ruining Emily's life and how I needed to be the bigger person. The nerve, right? I didn't respond. My lawyer told me to document everything in case they tried to pull something shady. But thankfully, they backed off once they realized they had no leverage. And then I found out why they were so desperate to scrap the prenup in the first place. Turns out, Frank and Carol weren't doing nearly as well financially as they pretended. Their business ventures had been losing money for years, and they were barely keeping their heads above water. All that fancy living? Just a bunch of smoke and mirrors. When Emily moved back in with them, their perfect little image started cracking fast. She went from living in our beautiful home to crashing in her old childhood bedroom. No more designer clothes, spa days, or high-end dinners. From what I've heard, they're still trying to keep up appearances, but it's only a jaker of time before it all falls apart. And let's not forget the other guy. The one Emily thought was her backup plan, the guy she thought she'd ride off into the sunset with? Yeah, he ghosted her. Lindsay told me he was just a serial dater, a guy who strung women along and had zero plans of settling down. Once he found out Emily didn't have access to my money, he bailed. So now she's stuck. No job, no savings, and living with parents who can't support her like they used to. Karma. I figured that would be the end of it. But of course, Emily wasn't done. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, she showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant tried to stop her, but Emily pushed her way in anyway. She looked rough, a hair unkempt, wearing old, wrinkled clothes, and she had this desperate look in her eyes. Jake, she cried, tears running down her face, I made a mistake. Please, I need you to forgive me. I leaned back in my chair and just stared at her for a second. Part of me wanted to laugh, honestly, but mostly, I just felt done. Worn out. Numb. Emily, we've already been through this, I said. This wasn't just a mistake. You made a series of choices, conscious decisions, that destroyed everything we had. And forgiveness? That doesn't undo any of it. She tried every angle, apologies, excuses, blaming her parents. Said she'd change. Even hinted that she wanted to start over. We can fix this, Jake, she begged. We can go to counseling. We can start fresh. But there was no fresh start left. Emily, I said, you didn't just cheat on me. You planned to leave me, and while you were at it, you were trying to take everything I'd worked for. That's not love. And that's definitely not something I can forgive. When she realized I wasn't giving in, the tears dried up and the anger came out. You're going to regret this, Jake, she snapped. You're going to end up alone. And one day you'll realize you pushed away the only person who truly cared about you. I just shook my head. No, Emily. You didn't care about me. You cared about the life I gave you. Now you get to figure out life without it. I called security and had her escorted out. That was the last time I saw her. Life's been a lot quieter since then. Lindsay and I still keep in touch. She apologized again for everything her family did, but honestly, she didn't need to. She was the only one who had the courage to do the right thing, and I'll always be grateful for that. As for Emily and her parents, word is their financial situation keeps getting worse. Part of me feels bad for Lindsay. She's stuck in the middle of it. But the rest of them? They made their bed. Now they've got to lie in it. If this whole experience taught me anything, it's this. You've got to stand your ground. People will try to take advantage of you, manipulate you, guilt you into doing what's best for them. But at the end of the day, you've got to protect yourself. To anyone out there dealing with toxic in-laws, a partner who's not what they seem, or just feeling stuck in a situation that doesn't sit right, trust your gut. Stand up for what's right. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Thanks for sticking around and listening to my story.